It's raining tacos from out of the sky. Tacos, no need to ask why. Just open your mouth and close your eyes. It's raining tacos.
Good evening, Guardians. I'd like to welcome you to the 16th episode of the Del Taco Fire Team Chat Podcast. I am your host this week, No Face, and today I am joined by... Well, actually, I'm not actually joined by anyone this week. So it turns out that between people getting sick, having wives, and things like that, we were not able to end up scheduling a whole lot. But since I am neither sick nor have a wife, looks like it falls on me to continue the podcast this week, which I'm completely okay with. But it also means I probably should have written a script because I have no one to bounce things off of. But you know what? Materials for suckers, we're just going to wing it. So going to be a little bit shorter episode this week, obviously. Just going to go through some basic news, and then at the end, there's probably going to be a rant that I'm going to go into, so I'll let you know when that happens so you can turn it off if you don't want to listen to me. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So a couple of things as far as Destiny goes that we want to update in the news. First off, last week was Crimson Days, which introduced the Crimson Doubles, or brought back Crimson Doubles, however you want to look at it, into the playlist. And in all honesty, I did play some Crimson Doubles. I did enjoy it, and that was kind of the consensus from the community, is that Crimson Doubles was a pretty good playlist, and that everyone pretty much enjoyed it. Now, sadly, Crimson Doubles has left the playlist. Obviously, that was a week-long event that has gone away. Now, personally, I really feel like that should have been extended to 2 weeks. Most events in the Destiny universe, I feel like 1 week is too short. Obviously, aside from things like that are going on right now, which is the faction rally, that can be a 1 week event. I understand that. Not a big deal. But something like Crimson Doubles, a timed event, like a once-a-year event, you know, things like the Dawning, whatever the Halloween one is called. See, this is why I should have written a script. It'll come to me later. But those sort of things, I feel like having a 1 week event is a bit too short, but that's okay. Now, on the bright side, Crimson Days, Crimson Doubles did not feature Eververse really at all. You were able to earn engrams without having, you got your illuminated engram or bright engram or whatever they're called now with your crimson engram. So it was actually a great way to gain loot, and there was some duplicate reduction stuff going on in there too. So you weren't going to receive duplicate items until you got a full set. Now, granted, I never got a full set, so I can't tell you if that really worked. I wasn't able to play a ton, but it did seem like it was a good system, and again, it is a step in the right direction. Now, moving on to Faction Rally, which is going on this week. I know I've said it before, but please, guys, just pledge Future War Cult. For crying out loud, let's get a win in there for Future War Cult, because, well, they need it. I'm sorry. Let's just be honest. They're never going to win, and it's sad. I feel like Bungie hates them and just keeps giving them crappy rewards so that no one will ever pick them. Not to mention that their shaders are, they're clown-like. I'm not going to lie. They're clown-like. The coolest, most interesting faction in my mind in the game, and they give them freaking clown colors for their shaders. I don't know. I don't understand it. But anyway, faction rallies. So good things about faction rallies. Again, this is actually going to be a pretty positive podcast. Good things are going on in faction rallies right now. So to begin with, they have removed the cap on how much how much loot you can really earn from lost sectors and things like that. They've removed that cap where it was if you farmed too fast, it would limit your drops. So now, as fast as you can kill the bosses in a lost sector is as fast as you can gain faction tokens. So that's, again, a step in the right direction. If people want to run in circles and kill the same boss over and over and over again, and that's fun to them, or they feel like that's the best way to gain loot, and gaining loot is what's fun to them, Bungie should not be limiting the ways that people have fun. So that is, again, another step in the right direction. They have also corrected some of the things with, or not corrected, they've changed. I'm sure they would tell you they weren't wrong to begin with, so there was no need to correct. They have changed the way that some of the drops are going on. So they have added more weapons into the loot pool, so you're not just having to hoard up your tokens until the last rally. Because, as I found out this week, if you try to hoard tokens between rallies, turns out they reset them. I lost all my tokens from last rally because I didn't want to get repeat stuff, so I was going to wait, and now all my tokens are gone. I'm not happy about that. So, in typical podcast fashion, I go from saying how this is a positive podcast to within 30 seconds talking about how much I hate something that has happened. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Sorry about that. So since I'm talking a lot, I'm also drinking my tea because, again, I'm not going to edit this. I'm just going to talk straight through unless I make a horrendous mistake. All right, so sticking with the Destiny. So, things that are going on. Obviously, there was a roadmap published a few weeks back that talked about all the changes that are coming to Destiny. And obviously, there's a lot of good changes coming that we really need to, or that Destiny really needs. However, on a bit of a sad note this week, they did state that some of those things are going to be pushed back from their intended release dates. So among those, the most prevalent ones are going to be the Nightfall Strike rewards, in which they're going to have exclusive Nightfall rewards. You know, much like the Destiny 1 system where Grasp of Malak is the first one that comes to mind, where you would grind Grasp of Malak over and over and over again, or that Malak Strike for Grasp of Malak. They're going to be doing the same thing. So there's going to be rewards that are tied specifically to the Nightfall to, again, incentivize what's going on, to incentivize you to actually run the Nightfall, which, again, great addition. Why it left, I have no clue. Actually, I have lots of clues, but we're not going to get into that today because, again, I'm going to try and keep it positive. But again, that is being pushed back to March 27th. Another thing that is being pushed back to March 27th is going to be the exotic duplicate reduction. Now, this is a huge one, in my opinion, and I hate that it's being pushed back because I cannot tell you how many times I have gotten repeat exotics, even though I do not have all the exotics yet. I have probably gotten, I want to say, out of my last 5 exotic drops, like 3 or 4 of them have been Aeon Swift, which, you know what, after the first one, why do I need more of them? But that one is also being pushed back to March 27th. So as much as I hate the fact that these things are being pushed back, what I will say is I am glad that Bungie is taking the time to actually get these things right. If they were just to push out so not to beat a dead horse, but Curse of Osiris was a terrible expansion. I had 0 expectations for it, so I had fun for the first few hours I played it, but in all honesty, the story was kind of weak, the rewards were kind of weak, there was nothing really extraordinary about it. There's nothing really worthwhile, worth downloading and paying for for that DLC. So I'm glad that they're not just pushing stuff out to try and meet a timetable, because I feel like that's really what happened with Curse of Osiris, is that we need to meet a timetable, so let's push it out in whatever state that it's going out there in. So I am really happy that they're taking time with this. It sucks that they're pushing them back, but I really hope that when these things are released, they are going to be released in a good state and they are actually going to be worthwhile. Because one of the things that they actually said is the reason the Nightfall Strikes were being pushed back is so that the devs and the artists and everything would have time to make those rewards really unique and really worthwhile. So what I'm hoping that means is they're not another reskin. If the Nightfall Strike rewards get pushed back and end up being a reskin, I swear I might just hurt someone. That's unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. So I'm really hoping with this extra time that's not what's going on, and if they will actually get those things worked out and will be worthwhile rewards. Now, the last major thing that they are pushing back is going to be the Mods 2.0. Now, this should come as no surprise to anyone that probably the most disappointing aspect of the new things in Destiny 2 is getting pushed back. Mods are hyper disappointing. They have been improved with the raid mods and things like that. That's a lot better. That's a step in the right direction. But let's be honest, mods are still not a game-changing sort of thing. They do not give the sort of variety that that we really want out of our weapons and armors. And so it's no surprise that a system that was incredibly broken is being pushed back. Now with mods, the Mods 2.0 system they're talking about, they have no clue when it's going to be ready. Absolutely no clue. My guess is, honestly, if we get it before September, I'm going to be pretty impressed. If we get it in September, I'm kind of expecting that's when it'll be ready, but it would not surprise me if it got pushed back to like, January 2019 or something like that. Mods 2.0, like if we ever get it, it's gonna be cool, but I don't really expect it anytime soon. So another one of those see you in September kind of things. If you're really looking for that weapon variety and everything like that, it's not coming anytime soon. The mods are not going to be ready for us to play within, for the next DLC or anything like that. Which, by the way, DLC 2 has not been delayed. So if you're looking forward to that, hopefully the story is actually worthwhile, because that's one of the main reasons I'm going to play. Because again, it's not going to fix all the weapon systems. It's not going to fix, the redundancy. It's probably not going to fix PvP. But hopefully there's a decent story to back it up. So again, if you're wondering, hey, should I jump back into Destiny right now? Odds are probably not. Like, the game's not terrible, but again, if you were frustrated with it a couple months ago, not enough has changed really to bring you back to where you're playing every day or anything like that. So again, Nightfall Strike Rewards will be coming back March 27th. Exotic duplicate rep. So that might be edited out. Exotic Duplicate Reduction also coming back on March 27th, and Mods 2.0 coming back sometime in like 2234 or something. And so March 27th, you might want to come back and check out those Nightfall Strike rewards and see if those are worthwhile. Right now, we can only speculate. I really hope they are. Now, next on the agenda is some non-Destiny related news, and that is going to be a story about Chris Lee and loot boxes. If you're unfamiliar with who Chris Lee is, he is a legislator out of Hawaii, and he is one of the main people who has been proposing regulations on loot boxes. Basically, I don't think that he obviously refers to them as loot boxes, but what he says, like in his proposals and everything like that, is gambling style mechanics. Which, when you really think about it, that's basically what a loot box is. If you are buying something that is, going to give you a random reward, you don't know what's in there, you have no choice, nothing gives you the odds or anything like that. It's basically a slot machine. It's an electronic slot machine. And so he is proposing regulation about those sort of things. There are tons of stories about Chris Lee going on right now, because just this week he met with ESA, which is the Electronic Software Association, which is basically a lobbyist for the games industry. And he met with them, and he had a couple of their representatives come out, and it could not have gone worse for ESA. They were terrible. These two goons they had coming out there either would not or could not answer the simplest of questions about things. They referred back to stuff and just basically said they either didn't know, or there was already research, or that there was some paper, but they couldn't cite the exact numbers or whatever. So Chris Lee, is honestly doing a great job in this area of pushing these things forward and making it a actual legislative thing and trying to get those loot boxes in there. One thing he brought up was about how China requires people to developers to state the odds of getting something out of a loot box, and ask them whether or not that would be something they thought was necessary. And generally, the ESA representatives basically fell back on basically saying that these were all optional things, that no one had to buy a loot box. And they even said, and they tried to use this as a defense, they said that the Star Wars Battlefront thing with EA, that EA even removed those sort of things, and they tried to use that as defense. And then Chris Lee, again, sharp guy, came back and said that, yeah, but now EA is putting those things back in there, where basically they say that, if you got defeated, one of the things that was in there was that you got defeated by an opponent, he used this power-up that he got from a loot box, do you want to buy loot boxes? And so he says that is a predatory tactic, which honestly I completely agree with. And I really hope these sort of things continue forward. I think it's going to be a very slow process, but it's a necessary process, because honestly it looks like the industry itself probably not going to self-regulate. ESRB ratings are all kind of self-regulation things, much like the MPAA with the Movie Association, right? All those ratings are self-regulation, and they're there to give consumers an idea of what's going to be going on in those games. But there's no rating, there's nothing in there that tells parents or people buying games if there's loot boxes and how they affect the games. And it doesn't look like the industry is willing to even consider self-regulation on those sorts of things. So it's really bad when, as an industry, even like your consumers are basically saying it's like, we don't like regulation, but you're screwing it up so badly that we really want the government to step in. So hopefully the games industry will either adopt some self-regulation and fix their tactics on this sort of stuff, or hopefully some of these legislations go through and we actually have the government regulating it. Personally, I don't like government regulation of a whole lot of things, but consumer protection is something that I'm really for as far as government regulation goes. So hopefully that is something that we see in some form with these loot boxes. I will try to remember to put a link to Chris Lee's YouTube, because he has basically this entire interview with these ESA representatives posted on his YouTube. If you follow any other gaming channels like Young Ye, things like that, he has gone over this sort of stuff. A lot of them have done videos on this, and they've probably done a much better job than I have. So go ahead, check those out, and I'll try and place some links in the descriptions as well so that you can look at those. Okay, Guardians, so major edit here that I'm sure you will hear the change in microphone levels and things like that, because last night I recorded this segment, and then this morning when I started editing, I decided that it was probably not the best done thing. Again, this is where No Face should probably write scripts, but he didn't, so let's once again wing what I talked about. So what I talked about is that if you have been watching the news, you obviously, actually, if you've just been not living under a rock for the past week or so, you know that there has been a shooting in Florida, a mass shooting, a school shooting in Florida. And so one of the things I talked about that's going on in the mainstream media, that's going on with politicians and things like that, is that politicians have been trying to link this shooting to media, to violent video games, to violent television, to violent movies and things like that. And as gamers, I feel like that's something we need to be aware of, that there is a, attack going on against games that we like, because obviously we all play violent video games to some extent. Even if you are playing something just like Hearthstone or like Pokemon or something like that, there's still battles, there's still fights that are going on. And so there is some element of violence in pretty much every video game that we play. So I wanted to touch on that briefly in a much less ranty way than I did last night, because I really got kind of upset last night. And yeah, anyway, and I'm totally deleting that recording, by the way, so you'll never hear it. But what I wanted to talk about is that we need to be aware that anytime someone is trying to blame media for things, to influence people and things like that, they're probably, and this is No Face's opinion, they're probably trying to distract you from a real point. Now, in this case, you can be pro-gun control, you can be anti-gun control, like, it doesn't matter to me which one you are, but it's easy to see that by blaming something other than the shooter, blaming something other than things that he directly did, is a distraction from the point. It has been, there's been a lot of science to back up that video games are no more influential, violent video games are no more influential on people's aggression and anger and things like that than pretty much any other form of media. Even seeing pictures of guns from children gives them the same sort of aggressive feelings that they can feel when they're playing a video game. Now, any form of competition, like if you go out and play a sport, if you're playing soccer or football or something like that, they have studied and seen those sort of things cause aggression as well. And so it's not, and again, aggression is not necessarily a bad thing. It is something that allows people to perform at a higher level, right? They, much like an adrenaline response would. So by someone saying that violent video games causing aggression is causing school shootings, that is causing mass shootings, is completely and totally ignoring the point. Because if we look at that, what we're seeing is that turns out school shootings and shootings in general they vary wildly across the United States and even more wildly across the world. Now, turns out almost the entire world plays video games. Japan has a very high percentage of the population that plays video games, yet they have very few school shootings. I'm not trying to call anybody out here, and this is actually a real stat. Alaska has Per capita, some of the most gun deaths in the country. Now, does that mean they're playing more video games than everyone else? Probably not. So by saying that these video games are causing more shootings is not really the point. Like, that's just something that's just trying to find a scapegoat, right? That's like saying that, breathing oxygen. Everyone who's ever breathed oxygen, right? Or every violent criminal has breathed oxygen. So therefore, the oxygen is really what's the problem here. If we just got rid of oxygen, right, these people wouldn't be so violent. Now, that's a true statement. Like, if we got rid of oxygen, like, there would be way less violent crime. I'll completely agree with that. But it's nonsensical. Like, it's ridiculous. So I just wanted to, again, put that information out there saying that, and this school shooting is, again, something that's very kind of close to me because I worked in the public school system, and specifically I worked with at-risk kids, which means I dealt with a lot of kids who were involved. Their families were involved in gangs, in gang violence. A lot of them who had been taken away from their families because of the fact that their parents were in jail, especially in my area, they had been deported, things like that. A lot of homeless students, so a lot of high-risk kids who were, honestly, a lot of them later in life ended up in jail for violent crimes, committed violent crimes, dropped out, things like that. And so I understand, like, that there is a tendency in some people for violent crimes, but to say that there is one contributing factor that is really what caused them to become a criminal, that caused them to commit these violent crimes, is ridiculous. And that is not something we should tolerate from our politicians. And I realize there's a lot of people in other countries who may listen to this and think this is insane. And I'm sorry, like, I understand that other countries have other issues and deal with it in different ways. But as far as, like, the US is concerned, we need to hold people accountable and not let them give us sound bites. Like, it's really easy to boil points down and be like, oh, well, it's the violent video games. Oh, it's the accessibility of guns. Oh, it's like the lack of armed guards or whatever. And give us like these binary kind of choices. Like, if we could protect our children if we just did X. And that's not necessarily the case. It's a multifaceted problem. There's tons of things out there that we need to consider. And, well, okay, I'm not going to say that. But there's a ton of things out there that we need to consider. We need to support people. We need to support people. We need to change our society so that there's not, like, no one feels like, oh, killing someone or killing someone's family or killing, myself or anything like that. So that's not an option they feel like is necessary. So they don't even feel like that is an option. We need to stop worrying about, like these sound bites sort of things. We need to stop worrying about, pleasing political party A or political party B or anything like that, and start worrying about how do we make humans better? How do we make ourselves better people? How do we make ourselves better citizens? And how do we raise better citizens? How do we make sure that those kids that are going to that school don't feel like they need to bully someone? How do we cause people to feel like if they've been bullied that they don't need to go out and kill people, right? That's the sort of stuff we need to be thinking about. Not, is playing The Division going to make me go to New York and start shooting gang members? Right? That was probably a terrible analogy, but you get my point, right? And so, again, this is probably why No Face should write scripts, because even on my non-ranty version, I'm kind of going off. But that's kind of how I feel. And so, if you feel like I'm wrong or anything like that, if you feel like, well, I hope I didn't upset anyone, in all honesty. Like, but I just wanted to. I hate ending on a really like super serious note, but I feel like this is something that needed to be talked about. And it's not something I think that I've really heard a lot of gaming reports on. I've seen a few articles, like I saw one on Forbes and things like that, talking about these comments, but they've not really been talked about a whole lot in mainstream gaming media. And so it's something that as gamers, I feel like we need to be aware of, that there's this sort of dialogue going on. And especially if you live in the U.S., that if one of these people is your congressman or anything like that, congressman, congresswoman, right? If you have a governor who is talking about these sort of things, that as a concerned citizen, you should probably contact him and be like, listen, Science doesn't back up what you're saying, right? How about we focus on real problems instead of finding scapegoats, right? Let's stop blaming video games for our problems. Let's stop blaming movies for our problems. Let's stop blaming immigrants for our problems. And that goes for any country, right? I know that talking to Esteban a lot, like blaming immigrants is the thing that is going on over there as well. And so, I mean, are there problems? Yes. Are there ways to deal with them? Yes, right? Can they be boiled down to a single bullet point, talking point, things like that? Probably not, right? So this is No Face kind of imploring the world to really look at problems and not just have a knee-jerk reaction, right? Let's look at problems, let's talk to people, let's find a multifaceted, let's find a nuanced position on it, and really try and communicate that to people. On the internet, that's hard. It's hard to have a nuanced position in 140 characters, right? Or however many a tweet is now, right? So we need to move beyond that. We need to be better people, and as a gaming community, we really need to basically look at these sort of things and take this sort of stuff, right? Like we talked about mental health a lot over the past few weeks. By the way, the Saint 14 podcast, or excuse me, charity stream went great for those of you who didn't tune in or weren't able to. But it went awesome. But we talk about mental health a lot and how that's a multifaceted problem. Like, that's how every problem is, right? And we need to make awareness of those problems. We need to, like, stop letting politicians tell us, like, oh, well, it's A or it's B. It's like, well, you know, it's little column A, it's little column B, right? Let's actually have adult conversations about these sort of things. And if you want to have one of those adult conversations with me, by all means do so. I'm trying not to put my political opinion out there very much, so that I'm not trying to influence, but I'm just trying to say that if you're forming a political opinion off of, you know, like sound bites, let's evaluate. Let's be a little deeper on those sort of things. And as a community, let's take this discussion deeper and get some real answers on these sort of things. So that being said, that's where I'm going to end my little rant there. Sorry about that. So, and I'll try and end on a positive note. In other news, right, Monster Hunter Worlds seems to be really cool, right? Seems to be a lot of fun. A lot of people in the clan are playing that. The Division, still fun. People hate the DZ, right? Don't go in alone. And I'm really not sure. Oh, Warframe, still fun. Kind of some weird updates coming soon. Maybe I'll get into that next podcast. But yeah, so play some video games. They're fun. They may be violent. Don't commit violent crimes. Be a human. Treat other people like humans. Well, that's pretty much the end of what I've got today. Hopefully next week, Krakenfall and Audio will be back and will be fully healthy and able to record with me so that you won't have to listen to me rant again, because I'm sure this is not the funnest podcast in the world, but that's okay. Next week, we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming, and it will be way more interesting, I'm sure. Again, thanks for everyone tuning in. Thanks for bearing with me through my rant, and I hope a lot of stuff, but I hope that you tune in next week and continue tuning in. Thank you once again for checking us out, and this is No Face signing off.